this video, I want to show you that it really boils down to boring makes money. I'm going to step you through basically the 6 things I do daily, day in, day out. Same old work as an online publisher, publishing a few new sites. So let's rip through it. Step 1, when I show up, suit up and show up. I'm usually freshest in the morning. I guess I'm a morning person. And so what I do is I focus on the most important work, which for me as someone who publishes quite a bit of content, that's the focus. It's the content that generates the traffic, which generates the money, is I review all new content. Some of it is has been published within the last 12 hours. Some of it is set up as drafts, and I'll review it, and then often there's a little bit of tweaking involved, which I'll do. Sometimes there's more to be done. I'll issue instructions, and unfortunately would have to put that over to another day when that can get done. But for the most part, a little bit of tweaking on my part, and I can carry on. I'm pretty involved. There have been periods over the course of years where I really wasn't even close to this involved, but I find just generally everything is at a higher quality if I'm paying attention to what's getting published for the most part daily. Now the time I spend on this is going to vary quite a bit. It really depends on the complexity of the content that happened to be published that day, and it's anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours. I leave it up to my VAs as to which articles they do. They do anywhere from 1 to 3, 1 to 4 a day. They kind of pick. I have things done, whatever's ready in the writing services, whatever's been queued up. There's usually quite a bit of inventory. I just let them pick, and I try to stay out of the process as much as possible. Step 2. I have really started to do a lot of interlinking, especially with my bigger sites. It's quite a job to go back. I've been pretty lazy with this over the years. I'm convinced that a site that's well linked with related content linked to one another is very good for on-site SEO, and so it's a no-brainer to do it. I've just been lazy over the years. Anyways, I've mended my ways. I've hired a dedicated virtual assistant who does the interlinking, so when I'm done with the tweaking of the new content for the day, I will send interlinking instructions, so articles to link out to and to link back to the new content. The instructions itself usually takes about 15 minutes. I'm pretty careful, try to be meticulous, make sure I do it right, but that's a lot shorter than if I had to go and do all the interlinking. That's a very tedious, time-consuming task. I'd rather just give the instructions, but if you are running solo, definitely take the extra probably 10, 30 minutes, whatever it takes to do some interlinking with your content. If you're doing 1 article a day, then it shouldn't take you more than 10, 15 minutes for that article, but it's definitely well worth doing. Step 3, rolling along through the day. This is a short task, but important. I have implemented a very well-planned, intricate tagging system. So a website, especially WordPress, has categories, which is self-explanatory, but there's another way to set up navigation and taxonomies, which is by default within WordPress, and that's with the tags. And it's just another way to organize and structure content and help users also find it on the site, and it's via tags. And I have a whole video dedicated to how I do my tagging, so I'm not going to get into the details here, but my instructions basically to anybody who works on the site is don't tag. I find when people who don't fully understand tagging, they make mistakes, they'll input the wrong spelling. I don't really like how WordPress does the tagging because it kind of auto-populates it, and you can input the wrong tag very easily. You can misspell, you can create new tags that aren't correct, and you end up with a huge jumbled mess of tags on a site. So I don't like that. So I do this. It doesn't take long at all. It takes a couple minutes, but now that I have an intricate tagging system set up, I consider it really important, and I'll do this. Step 4 in the day, 20 minutes, FAQ schema markup. Now, I don't do this every day. It really depends on the content that was recently published or that I'm working on for the day. Some of it, if it has an FAQ section, then I will add the FAQ schema markup. Sometimes I will have ordered just FAQ chunks of content from a writing service, and I'll add that to some existing content that obviously relevant, that pertains to that topic or article. And so because this the markup part is a little bit technical. I don't have anybody else do it. I do it. I think it could be easily outsourced. I just haven't gotten around to it. It's one of these things. I don't do this every day, but I would do it a few times a week. When I do it, it only takes about 20 minutes. Step 5 is the email newsletter. Now, I send it out about 3 to 5 times a week. I imagine in a few weeks I'm probably going to get this up to at least 5, 6, maybe 7 times per week. I use a email software called Interlinking, and it's pretty cool because basically it creates a pretty nice looking newsletter for big niche sites with a lot of content. You need to have a good number of articles every day to make sense to use the Interlinking, and basically you just insert a URL and it creates this thumbnail image with the title and excerpt and a link inside the email newsletter. It can do a whole list of different articles. So I do like it. At the same time, while I'm ripping through the content on the site, adding it to this email creation software, I'll just flip the articles off to Flipboard. Not that I really get any traction off Flipboard yet. I'm not much of a participant there either, so it's no wonder I'm not really going to invest a lot of time in it, but I figure it doesn't hurt to at least add it to a Flipboard magazine. So the email newsletter is something I've been hot and cold with over the years. I actually have a blog post dedicated to it. For a while I've stopped it and then I restarted it, and at the end of the day, for a lot of niches, including my biggest niche site, even though I can get quite a few subscribers, it doesn't really pay off that much. I'm really running it right now simply because it is additional traffic to a website, not a whole lot, but it is something, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time to do it. But the other reason is I'm actually setting up an automated sequence. So basically work I do today is going to actually pay off in the long run. So I just keep adding an email to the sequence, and so a new subscriber would start off at the beginning and go through. So we'll see how that goes. I'm constantly trying to somehow make email newsletters worth it for niche sites. Haven't had a great deal of success, but I continue to try. So I do it right now. I use MailChimp for this particular newsletter. I separated it from other newsletters just because it's kind of an insurance policy, really. I find with big niche sites that have a really broad, sort of more general audience within a vertical, you're going to get more, at least I do, I get more complaints for the emails that go out versus say something like Fat Stacks where very, very few complaints. And I just don't want to put the more lucrative email newsletters and lists that I have at risk, so I've separated them in different accounts, and basically just for an insurance policy. The overall cost is roughly the same just because both MailChimp and Aweber charge on a number of subscribers, so both accounts just have fewer subscribers. The last thing I do pretty much every day is I place a content order. Now, this is another one of those longer tasks. Even though I work off order templates within the writing services I use, I've been customizing for each topic quite a bit. And in the past, I haven't. I've been pretty sloppy about how I order content. I've really trying to step it up and spend time on instructions. I find the better the instructions I give, the better the content I get, the fewer requests for revisions I need to send writers, and overall it's just generally time well spent. So I'll order anywhere from, well, some days I don't order any if I have a huge inventory, but most days I'll order at least 1 and sometimes up to 5. And I just like to have a large inventory of content ready to go at any time. So because I do spend time customizing the content and well, just generally trying to be very careful when I'm ordering, the time could be fairly long. I could spend anywhere from about 20 to 90 minutes. Now, usually when I'm doing this, I have the keyword research done. I do that as a monthly task. About sometimes every other month, I'll do a long keyword research session and come up with a list and lists of keywords for my niche sites. And so I always have them, and I have the topics available. But some days I'll actually, open up old Ahrefs and do some keyword research just for the particular day. Maybe trying to hone in on some topics and improve the keywords that I'm going after. So it's some days I will do it as part of this process, and that would extend it to 90 minutes. So the overall time I spend on these everyday tasks to run on each site will be anywhere from a couple hours to upwards of 5 hours. So it kind of depends. And then some days I'll end up kind of going into rabbit holes doing stuff. I don't know, writing different articles, and end up spending even a lot more time on a particular niche site than I'd intended. So, which brings me to the next section. Notice what I haven't done yet in the day. Okay, now this is most days. I haven't checked Google Analytics or revenue numbers. I kind of make a point not to. I used to, as soon as I got to work, check Google Analytics and ad revenue and affiliate revenue numbers for the day or for the day previously, and I really try to avoid this until my most important work is done. And the reason is it's distracting. If something, let's say it was a down day or an up day, or something volatile, what happens is I'll end up digging around and trying to figure out what's going on, and maybe do searches in Google, and before I know it, I've spent an hour dealing with something that, for the day there's not a whole lot I can do. Really, the most important thing I can do is keep getting good content out. Now, that's not to say I'm like an ostrich and put my head in the sand and ignore these things. No, I don't. I do check the numbers, usually daily, but I'll wait till later in the day once the important stuff is done, and then if there are any issues, I can, and if I need to investigate, I can. So I do know some people tend to spend a lot of time checking metrics. For me, I find it quite a bit of a distraction throughout the day, so I just wait and do it once toward the end of the day. Now, just because I have daily tasks, I also have stuff that I do monthly, sort of larger projects that just don't need to be done daily, thankfully, but they do need to be done on occasion. So one of those is keyword research. I already mentioned this. I'll just sit down, once I'm running out of my existing list of keywords for, article topics for any site, I'll just sit for a few hours and bang out a bunch more keywords, try to generate another list of 50, 100, sometimes 200, and get that added on the list, and I'm ready to go for ordering content for another month or two. The other thing I can do in bulk, which is really, really nice, is Pinterest pinning and posting on Instagram. Now, I'm in visual niches. 2 of my sites are in very visual niches. I don't bother, if it's not a visual niche, I don't really do much with Pinterest or Instagram. But for the visual niches, I do quite a bit of pinning and Instagram posts. And I use Tailwind app. I can do it in bulk, which is really nice. So I can basically load up a schedule for several weeks or even several months if I want, and then just be done with it. Also, monthly, what I do is prepare profit and loss statements, and those do form the fodder for the income reports at FatStacks, which is nice. Those are usually fairly popular, but it's also really good exercise for me to know what am I wasting money on, how much am I actually earning, because usually what I think I'm earning is not even close to what's actually happening. Same with the expenses. The expenses can quickly get out of hand in this business, and I like to see what's happening and try to basically eliminate any waste. You got to spend money in this business for various software and hiring people and so forth, but I also don't want to just spend money frivolously. And I will also do some data analysis, more than just, what kind of traffic levels and revenue levels. I mean, like really digging in, seeing what's working, what types of articles and which particular articles are performing really well recently, which ones aren't, and just I get a sense of what's going on with the numbers for my niche sites. And then there are those once in a blue moon tasks. I would say these happen maybe once a year, every other year, maybe twice a year. And so I don't really have a schedule for any of these things. They just kind of do them when it just feels like something that needs to be done. And one of them would be ad testing. I should probably do this quite a bit more than once a year. Anyways, ad testing, I don't want to say constantly, but regularly I will try new ad networks I'm curious, really. Spending time ad testing over the years has paid off because I've generated good revenue from display ads on my niche sites. And had I just stuck with AdSense and the placements and configurations that I had the first time I started, I probably wouldn't be doing nearly as well. So it's been my investment in testing different ad networks, different types of ads, different placements, so on, over the years has paid off. So I continue to do that. I also once in a while get the itch for a new theme, a new design on the website. Now, I used to do this more often than I do now. I have no plans right now to change it. I'm pretty happy with the designs I have. I actually use the same themes for the most part across all my niche sites. It makes it easy for updating and dealing with theme support, and I get to know the themes really well, so it makes it really easy and efficient to manage multiple sites. Once in a while, I will buy some traffic to niche sites. Recent years, it hasn't worked out at all. I actually recently spent some time doing it, just didn't pan out, wasn't worth it. So, please don't run out, go buy a bunch of traffic, because it's to an ad-supported site. It's pretty difficult these days. I spent a few weeks at it, more time than I should have, and didn't really work out. So I'll probably put that off for another year or two before I try that. Also, what I do is I try new article concepts, and I usually write these. I'll come up with an idea, I'll write up the article, and try to get it really, really good. And so it serves as an example. If I go ahead with it and order more of those article concepts, I have an example that I could give to the writers. Now, I don't always do it myself. Sometimes I'll come up with a concept, I'll create a pretty in-depth outline, and then hire a writer to do it. But I'm playing around with new article ideas and different types of content within articles pretty regularly. Also, on occasion, I need to hire and train VAs. It's pretty self-explanatory. I also like to try new writing services. I do this definitely more than once a year. I like to know what's out there. It's kind of like my curiosity with ad networks. I definitely want to see what's available with new writing services at all price levels, really. I'm willing to try more expensive. I'm willing to try the lower cost, just sort of see what I could get, because at the end of the day, some forms or concepts of content don't need to have a lot of money spent on them, and some of them need much better writers and need to be willing to pay a lot more. So it really depends on the article. So I'd like to get a good idea of what's out there, my options available. I do usually use multiple writing services depending on the article and the type of content that I'm ordering. And finally, once in a while, this is probably the biggest culprit for those rabbit holes I was talking about that I can fall into that can suck up a day or two, and that's tinkering with new plugins and software. I really do try to avoid that because, I don't know, it could be a huge time waster. I don't know. Bells and whistles sort of thing, bright shiny object syndrome. Once in a while, I mean, obviously new plugins come out and they're worth checking out because they can be a huge help. But generally, for the most part, I just try to avoid this and stick with the game plan. So that's it. This is not glamorous business. This is pretty standard stuff. It's the bulk of my time is spent really focusing on the content, because at the end of the day, what a website, online publisher, blogger, etc. is dealing with content. That's the product. So I really try to make it as best as possible. Hands are tied to an extent, right? Like, I do want to make a point. When you're starting out, I'm talking about outsourcing and using writing services and so forth, and I really appreciate that a lot of people can't do that, especially when you're starting out. And in fact, I wouldn't advise that you would, unless you have a lot of extra money available for this type of business. But when I started out, I wrote everything myself, and so really, if you're writing it yourself, that's great. Probably some of the best stuff, highest earning content I have out there is stuff I wrote myself years ago. And so the time you want to write the content when you're at your most optimal working time during the day. For me, it's in the morning, so that was when I wrote. I would just set aside the first 3, 4, 5 hours of the day and just write, and usually able to get one really good article, sometimes two, done during that time, and that's what it took. So I talk a lot about the outsourcing, but if you're not there yet, that's no problem. You just sort of sub out the time where I'm spending reviewing content, which, because I outsource, I can publish quite a bit more content. Just write it yourself, and then the rest of the stuff, more or less, is stuff that can follow and do toward the end of the day. That's a wrap on what I do during the day. It's pretty basic stuff, not glamorous. It can even get kind of boring, but here's the thing. I still love it. It's been quite a few years I've been doing it. I love doing it. It's a fun business for me, despite it being pretty much the same thing day in and day out. Thanks for watching.